Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. I'm jumping right in here today with three guests. Usually I just have the single shot, but we're rolling with it all, and so I've got a great panel that is coming up in just a moment. I'm so excited for this conversation and really appreciative of Enterprise Bank and Trust for what they have done to enable me to conduct this show every single day. Enterprise Bank, hashtag no stopping you. Casey Cattle Company, veteran owned and operated. Wagyu beef, steaks, burgers, bacon cheeseburger, brats, award-winning hot dogs. You can check them out online, also social media, and they'll deliver right to your house. So take a look at them and JJ's Wine and Spirits, southwest corner of College and Antioch. If you're in the Overland Park area, 15% off bottles of wine, Wine Wednesday. Appreciate the support from all of them. I'm pushing through real quick to get to my panel for a couple of reasons. One, I started the show early today, so I hope that I already see a ton of people that are watching. For those of you that are watching live right now, please let your friends know that it is out there, or at least pass on the links afterwards so that we can make sure that everybody gets a chance to hear this conversation. I am so excited right now to be joined by my panel, and I'll start by saying this, that Andre's been on the show before, André Davis, also joined by Nicole, Jacob, Silvey, and Chandra Clark. Nicole is with Connection Coach KC, Chandra, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. A couple of things. First and foremost, I'll let everybody know, and Chandra, you'll appreciate this, we were talking about this before, that I have a history with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. This is where you start to feel old. My little brother, who's in St. Louis, I used to work in St. Louis, I just texted him a little while ago, turned 32 today, and I had him back when he was 14. And I bring that up for two reasons. One, amidst everything that's going on in our country, and as I started reaching out to friends, specifically black friends, to see how things were going, and that awkward conversation of, what do I say? Well, I don't want to be insensitive. I want to offer support. I want to learn. I want to listen. It's an awkward first text to make. With him, I reached out to see how he was doing, and he was one of the ones that said, "I'm not good. I'm not good at all, and I don't have hope." That broke my heart, because we all, regardless of the color of our skin, we all have different experiences. Just because you're black doesn't mean everyone has the same experience. And his experience hasn't been very good, and that sat with me for a while now, that he is living a life as an adult now where he's not sure that there's hope. I've also been so incredibly inspired by so much of what is going on, and having conversations with friends like André, and trying to understand more, and saying, like, from my end, and then we'll let you guys all introduce, but for me, it's like I grew up and was raised in a way to treat everyone well, to love everyone, but yet, as all this happened and we witnessed that murder, and I started hearing from friends and seeing all this discussion and realizing how silent I had always been, I realized that my love of people and trying to see everyone equally wasn't enough. That I don't, maybe I was part of the problem, because I could have been speaking out. So that's so much to me of where I'm at personally right now, is yes, speaking out, but also listening and just learning. And there'll be a lot of people that are watching right now that look like you guys. There'll be a lot of people right now watching that look like me. Let's have these conversations. So let's go around the horn, and we got to go ladies first. I was going to go around in order, but
Totally.
But we'll start with Nicole, and then we'll go to Chandra. So Nicole, I'll let you tell everyone. Everybody knows who you guys are anyway, but tell us about who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Joel, for having us today. This is a really crucial conversation, and one we're eager to engage in. Again, I'm Nicole, and I'm with Connect KC. I'm the president and founder, and I started my business as a life coach to help connect people in intentional and sincere ways to others in the community, with really the catalyst being seeing that marginalized communities don't have the same access to building networks. And we know that building your network is the foundation so much for other opportunities, not less than work and opportunities. Also, I am a part of the Roundtable with Kiana Sinks, where we convene crucial conversations, and that is not different than the conversations we're having today around a variety of topics. We believe those crucial conversations, and when we bring people together face to face, that's where we become more connected, and there's that increased understanding. Another piece that I'm very passionate about is helping not-for-profits diversify their boards intentionally, because not-for-profit boards still have large underrepresentation of people of color. That's a little bit about me, and thank you for having me today.
All right, Nicole, it's great to have you. Chandra, let's go to you and tell us about your role with Big Brothers and everything that you do.
Joel, thank you again for having me. My name is Chandra Clark. I serve as the Director of Community Outreach for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Kansas City. And through that role, I'm really able to support and defend the potential of our youth. And then I'm also the president and founder of Beloved, which is a lifestyle brand. And the mission of that organization is to inspire hope and healing through in a fragmented world. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I'm just really passionate about youth, especially young women, young minority women who have had adverse circumstances, especially trauma recovery, and just maybe need the support and the guidance to overcome and to thrive. And so that's a little bit about me, and I'm so excited to be here with you, Nicole, and André.
All right. Let's make sure that I have all of this right. Okay, let's get to André now. I got to unmute André because, you guys all know this. Me and André are talkers. Not that Nicole and Chandra aren't either, but I think, right. André, what do we got? We got on the phone the other day to have a conversation. We just said, hey, you said to me, I'd love to have a conversation. I said, yes, I would too. And I don't know why we scheduled an hour. It wasn't going to go an hour, but.
No, we scheduled 30 minutes and it went almost 2 hours. So that's kind of what happened. But no, man, this is a good thing. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And so André Davis, I've spent probably the better part of 2 decades doing corporate engagement work with a lot of different industries and find myself in a mentor capacity, a coaching capacity, leadership capacity with nonprofit, for-profit businesses, and just trying to change the way that people think. And so, I'm honored to be here. It's always a pleasure to be able to just share a perspective. We don't represent every Black person in the country. Sure. What we represent is our shared experiences, right? That's really what it's about. And if we can just open up a dialogue, because there's a tendency in our country, in our time, and in our social chatter, where if it's not happening to us, well, it's probably not happening. And so how do we get beyond that? And so this is really what this is about. And Joel was the one that reached out to me and said, hey, let's get a conversation started. I felt like these 2 ladies were perfect for the conversation. And here we are. So I'm honored to be here. I work for a company called Built. We're doing some pretty cool things in the community and super fascinating things, and part of the leadership team over there. And so this is a thrill. So I'm excited to get into it. I know we're running behind. I know we're going to have to speed up. So I'm going to talk less, listen more, and then we can go.
Well, we'll give it. I want to listen more to. I can't say it enough, but listening is such an important skill for all of us at any time of life. But I think it's more important than ever right now because, look, even beginning with the pandemic, it's like these are times for empathy because everyone's going through something. And I hope that we can channel that same empathy. And empathy to me is what I call walking in someone else's shoes. I think it's something that I didn't do well enough, up until recently, because it wasn't enough, as I said before, to view everyone as human beings. I wasn't walking in my Black friend's shoes. I wasn't asking those questions because I think there could be a perception that hey, if you're successful, and by the way, this is true in anything. Like I see this with athletes all the time. Well, they're making millions, they must be fine. Well, that doesn't mean that they don't have stuff too. And so right. I say that like here I have 3 successful professionals in our community. And what I thought about, and when I talked to André about advancing this conversation is, I think it would be so easy to say, oh, Nicole, Chandra, André, they've made it, they've figured it out, they're great professionals, they're successful, I hope I'm successful. I think that so many of us have done a lot of things, or we hope. But that doesn't mean it hasn't come without a steep hill to climb. That doesn't mean that as a Black man, as a Black woman, that you aren't climbing a hill, or that you are climbing a hill that I didn't have to climb, or at least one that is significantly steeper, whether it shows or not. And that's what I wanted to bring to light in this conversation. It is ultimately what white privilege is. The hill that I haven't had to climb is the privilege that I have had. I didn't understand that growing up. By the way, I told you guys that our friend Kiana would jump in quickly, and she did. And I always pop her stuff up there because
hey, Kiana.
At some point, I'm going to take her on the road with me. Oops, I'm messing with my controls here. At some point, I'm going to take Kiana on the road with me as my PR machine, because she's always pumping me up. So I just wanted to say that, and others have commented. Let's start, Nicole, with you and your thoughts on that, because you have been successful, you are successful, but what challenges have come with that as a Black woman?
You know what? I'm so glad you started there, and I so appreciate your comments, because not a degree, zip code, how you dress can make you immune to the pressures of systemic racism. It's in the success that you may see. Thank you for saying that about the three of us have achieved and others. It's in spite of systemic racism. I know when President Obama got elected, the first thing I heard one of my dear friends say, and my heart just cracked, was, we're in a post-racial society. And when I was talking about race issues, and she's a white friend, she said, oh, but we have a Black president. And I just knew that she'd missed it. Yes, he achieved success, or listing Oprah or any of the number of people. That doesn't mean that it doesn't still exist. It shows that we can thrive in spite of. I think that speaks to our resilience. But what I see as a Black woman is we're grieving, not just Black women, Black men, but we're grieving Black women. I have a Black son, and there's no bereavement leave for Black people when these things happen. And I saw recently a cover of an article that had a picture of the protesters and an incident that didn't go well within protesting, that was showing the rioting with the topic, with the headline, "How did we get here?" And I think if you ask any Black person, we know how we got here. It's a rhetorical question. It's a matter of time when there's so much going on, and there seems to be inaction and just talk. There's hurt feelings and how those things manifest themselves. And I'm sad to hear that you're little, is not hopeful, because there are those moments where I have felt hopeless, but I have utilized my experiences to say the legacy of my ancestors have gotten me here. I can't give up now. I fought for equity and inclusion, and I'll continue to do so. And I look around at my colleagues and friends. It's worth it. We can't do less than. And do I get tired? Yes. I started a hashtag on Facebook, very different than the tone I usually have. I usually have a pretty optimistic sharing about family. And I snapped after the Amy Cooper incident, if I'm honest. And I said, hashtag we tired, to show that we'd had enough and that we've been speaking, but there's certain things that needed to be said. So that's where I've been feeling as
it was and Nicole might have froze up there for a second. That's okay. We got it. That was a week, and not everybody remembers that, the murder of George Floyd was preceded by that racist moment in Central Park with Amy Cooper, and it was one that was just cringeworthy, and I'm sure is one that resonated so well with you all, because for me it was just an embarrassing moment, and it was like, I know how it happens, but it was just so disheartening. And then I sit there and think, well, how often, have Black men and women and children, for that matter, had to deal with that type of perception? I'll shut up here quickly, but last week, or a little over a week ago, I had on our baseball show Bob Kendrick, who we all love from the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and Dave Sims, who I believe is the only African-American television play-by-play guy in baseball, which is absurd. Dave is 67. He looks like he's 40. So that's where it could be a little confusing when you say, wait a minute, you started working in 1973. But Dave, Dave talked about having lived in his apartment in New York for years, and still, sometimes walking in and women clutching their purse. Like, he's like, man, I'm not going to shake you down for that. Like, so, that's something obviously that someone like me has never had to deal with before. Chandra, I'm going to have you unmute yourself. There we go. I just muted you. I'm learning some new skills here as we go. I have to be the TV director during this pandemic too. Chandra, I'm curious, you're your take on that and a bit of what Nicole was saying.
Joel, so I grew up in Louisiana. I moved to Kansas City when I was 10. So I've been in the Midwest for 32 years. And it's been recently that I feel like I've finally been able to face a lot of the pain that I've suppressed as a Black woman. So early on, you know, growing up in Louisiana, I was used to segregation, but I had a different sense of knowing my worth because my grandparents and my parents instilled in me early on to be proud of the color of my skin. However, I witnessed things like my grandfather suffering because he was an extremely dark-skinned Black man. I remember being 5 years old and my dad was the only one to work for a utility company in Louisiana, and he would talk about all of the racist encounters he had, and I loved my dad. So the minute I got in front of his coworkers, I confronted them about their mistreatment of him at 5 years old. I remember us taking family trips to Kansas City during the summer, and one time driving through Arkansas and having two white men call my dad the N-word, and I jumped out of the car and my parents had to hold me back. And I share those experiences because I think that when I talk about this trauma, I've somehow just survived racism. I've somehow just figured that I had to push through it. So it's the hidden things that have been done that I somehow think that even I, as a Black woman, knowing that I'm proud and knowing that I'm an advocate for other Black men, women, and children, I still have kind of turned away from it because it's too painful. And lately I've been sitting in that. And so when you talk about this idea of success, success for me is that I'm still living and breathing. It's not about a title. It's not about a salary. It's not about accomplishments, all the things that I somehow thought as a Black woman that if I got those, then I would be okay. Success is really about knowing your worth and honoring that in the essence of who you are, and also being that voice for other people. But I do have to be honest with you that part of me is like, why now? Why has it taken this for us to bring about change? We've been suffering like it's beyond race, it's human. Like, how dare you mistreat other human beings because of the color of their skin? And then all of a sudden, now we want change.
I've thought about that, about the why now part, and I think that my perspective might be different. I know for me, when I watched that murder, I mean, we all watched a murder, and it wasn't the type of murder that you see in the movies. I don't mean to demean that, but you know, sometimes you think, and when stuff's glorified, it's, you know, it's a quick moment, I guess is what I'm getting at. This was watching a death over the course of nearly 9 minutes, and everyone saw it. I mean, my comment has been, if you think this is the first, then you're fooling yourself. I don't need to tell my Black friends that. I might need to tell some of my white friends that. I hope that we're smarter than that. This was the one that everybody watched. And so why didn't the other ones resonate the same way? Why didn't Michael Brown in St. Louis resonate the same way? Why didn't all of the others? And I think that because that full video was there, and because everyone is shooting everything in terms of video now, that it's the default reaction now that if something is up, record it, which I think is a good thing. This should have happened forever ago. André, I'll open it up to you. You told me the other day to watch the documentary, Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th, and I did, and it was, yeah, I mean, it was a tough watch, but it was so maddening because it shows you how we got to here and how it's still going that direction. Like to me, we're not done. I mean, I hope this is the start of pushing things to where so many people have tried to push them for years. I just wonder what your take on where things are at right now.
Yeah, I sort of, you know, I mirror what Chandra said, right? You know, racism never went away. It's always existed. It exists in different formats, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go back to when my mother was born, well, it was sheets and riding horse. You know, she's not that old, but you know, you get where I'm going. It was sheets and riding horses and doing this thing, burning crosses. They wear suits today. They sit in DC. They are in politics. they're teachers, they're law enforcement, they're attorneys. So it's different. There's been a migration of this ideology, right? And so, and then there's also a movement that, you know what, it's not happening to me. I don't believe it's happening. And you said it. The video itself, 9 minutes of a torture, a virtual murder. I think you have people that have never seen that. And then that officer's cavalierness of, and if that's a word, if it isn't, it is now, but that word, right? So that, how cavalier he was by doing what he did, I think it awoke some people. But to Chandra's point, you know, we've always faced it, right? And sometimes if you haven't been around it, you can't see what you've never experienced. We see it, and it's subtle, and it's really subtle here, right? So it's a look, it's a gesture, it's a word. We know what the word might be. Hey, he's really articulate. Wait a minute. What did you expect him to talk like? So there's even that unconscious piece to it, right? And so how do we break down the unconscious piece of it so that you expect someone that looks like we look to speak like we have some sense, right? That we are educated. And so I think you're starting to see that. I think people are awoke right now, and they're listening. The real test will be, what do you do with it? What are you willing to give up to have the voice heard? What are you willing to separate from so that you are on the right side of history, right? Because we all want to kind of, you know, go with our fray and be with our friends. Well, we don't want to know. This moment calls for you not just to be vocal, but get involved. And we're starting to see that because we've got, I've never seen it in time where we have so many young, white, every hue involved in a march or a protest, the peaceful protest, and you won't meet many people that condone the rioting and the looting. So when we talk about who's doing what, there's a tendency to really focus in on the what, which is the rioting, the looting. We never focus really though on the why. But why are they doing that? People are oppressed. We understand now more than any time that we have a health crisis and a health disparity. When you think about what's happened, coupled with the Central Park lady saying you can't bird watch, to the murder, to people not even receiving their CARES Act check in the community, on top of being the highest risk of COVID, and the numbers for brown and black people, getting COVID supersede any other ethnicity, and then the murder. And then we wonder, why aren't they happy? Why aren't they excited about life? You are a little bit disconnected if you think that. And I'm hoping that we get to a point where when someone of color says the police did this, or my job did this, or someone treated me away, that we won't say, yeah, but people really don't do that. I'm hoping we'll say, tell me about that. And if we can get to the tell me about that, I think we start having more of a human interaction. We're not there yet. We're going to see if the country has the leadership to do that. And it's yet to be seen.
Yeah. Well, we need the leadership for sure, but we need people to, in my opinion, to not let up. And that's such a simple statement for me to make, because I'm guessing that for each of you, and you can only speak for yourselves, that you've been pushing your whole lives. And so, look, if hopefully we're getting more people to the party, then more people in the streets. I do have hope for the next generation. I mean, every generation hopefully gets better. However, as was shown in that documentary 13th, every time things get better, abolish slavery, bring in the right to vote, there's a counter reaction to it to say, oh, okay, you can do this now. We'll make it more difficult and make it harder to vote, or make it harder to do this, or make it harder to do that. So there's no okay, now this is the moment. So I sort of, I get that one. Nicole, for you, what have been the biggest, and I sort of touched on this before a little bit, what have been the biggest challenges for you in achieving your success? When I talked before about having to climb a steeper hill, what have some of those hurdles been for you, and what are they still?
I think some of the biggest obstacles are the belief that I shouldn't be in certain spaces, that there are white spaces and For a Black person to be there, we have to be twice as good, twice as bright. Those comments about being articulate or having to look a certain way. There's this belief that white supremacy has been able to consistently thrive because there's been people who are complicit in that. And many of us who are African American, especially I'm from Generation X, we've gotten the message that to be successful, you must assimilate. And that is to be more in line with white culture. And so being successful came with having to navigate those spaces. I was born in the Bronx. My mom is an immigrant from Jamaica and then moved to the Bronx. We met later in life, my father, who also is from the Bronx, and then I moved to upstate New York. So I had a background of being in very diverse communities, mixed income, mixed faith backgrounds, the whole range, to primarily white communities, and having to show up as myself authentically, but not always having that affirmed or acknowledged or celebrated has been challenging. So too, there's internalized oppression. And so navigating among people who look like myself, who think, how did she get there? How did she do that? And more with a somewhat of a criticism or some comments. It's navigating and having a foot in two different seemingly communities has been very challenging. I was a part of a podcast called Life in the Middle, 5 Black women talking about navigating life as middle-class women, middle management or senior leadership, living in the Midwest, but between the Black and white communities, and how we have to move in those spaces is very challenging. It takes more mind weight. It's this mental space that we do. Some of it is just fluid, but some of it is real intentionality. I also speak about that Black people are in a constant state of risk analysis. So when I show up in a space, there may be things and someone says a microaggression. Do I call that person on that in the meeting right there and risk that my job could be threatened? Do I hold that in? When do I speak on certain topics? What's the appropriate thing to say? What's the appropriate thing to wear? It's a level of consciousness that we have to, that's a burden, quite frankly, that most of us, by the time we're this age, it becomes second nature. But it's something that if you are a white person and a white male, you don't have to think of in the ways that we do. So that's been some of the biggest obstacles. But fortunately, I've had champions that have spoken on my behalf. And that's why I've started Connection Coach KC, is to help people identify those champions, those keys, and those door openers. I would be remiss if I didn't say some of the visibility and attention that I've received hasn't been on behalf of those white allies who have given me the stage and stepped aside. So I think the important thing for people to hear is there are Black people who are competent, thriving. It's not just the 3 of us. There's an army of people just like us, but it's, they have the stage and the platform to share their knowledge and their expertise, and are people listening to their lived experiences? Because what bothers me most is poor George Floyd, beloved, and we'll never forget his name. May 25th was his last breath. But were we talking about this stuff on May 24th? Black people were, and trusting what we say, as André said, that's what's hurtful. The 9-minute video is beyond, just beyond description. It's so heartbreaking, but all the times we shared and told and cried, and all those moms and Trayvon's mom and all those people who said that wasn't enough. And so at this season, I have real mixed feelings. I have hope like I've never had before, which seems counterintuitive, but a deep sorrow and pain that it had to take Mr. Floyd taking his last breath to get us here.
You know, and you were talking about being a mom before too. I think that, you know, when I heard, was it 2 weeks ago now? Yeah, the mayor of Atlanta with that passionate press conference. It was her and Killer Mike, and you know, and both of them gave this, to me, the speeches of a lifetime. And they didn't drown each other out, but like either one, if you were going to give an award for most inspiring speech, could have won it at the same exact press conference. And what resonated to me was when the mayor talked about having to worry about her son leaving the house and going out to the protest. And it was like, what mother in America couldn't relate to that, right? Doesn't every mother worry about every moment that their kid, I don't care what color you are. So if that alone can get into any mom, wherever they're at, head, moms worry about their kids. That's part of being a mom. Who doesn't get that? Chandra, I want to ask you, and actually I want to ask all. I mean, you talked about a moment that you had when you were younger of getting so upset and, wanting to burst out of the car and all of that. It's been interesting the last few weeks because when you hear people discuss the talk that happens in every black household over and over and over again. Us white folks thought that the talk was about the birds and the bees, not what to do when the cops pull you over. And I told this story on the podcast. I had my good friend Angel McGee on from the Urban Youth Academy and the Royals and the Chiefs. And I was telling her, and I'll be very brief on this because I've already told it on the show, about getting pulled over at gunpoint a year and a half ago. And it was a misunderstanding. Someone had swapped plates, and I was driving my truck with the plates of a stolen truck that wasn't mine. But I've never been arrested. I've been pulled over, but I'd never been pulled over at gunpoint and handcuffed. But with the heart pounding and racing, there was still that default in my head, that immediate thought of this must be a misunderstanding. And that was a moment a year and a half ago. I didn't label it white privilege, but I remember walking away and everything was sorted out thinking, what would it have been like to be black? I told that story on our baseball show too, and Dave Sims' first comment was it light out or dark out? That to me was also telling. But I bring that up, and I'll continue to bring that up because I think it's the ultimate white privilege story. And I thought white privilege meant that you had enough money and, we were middle class and all of that. White privilege was not having to worry about those kind of things. Chandra, what do you tell the young kids that you're such an influence on right now, in terms of Big Brothers, and you're, you can make an impact on these kids' lives? What's the message that you share with them?
To own their worth. So to fight their worth, because they have to know their worth and to own their worth. So I'll share a very authentic story with you. I was a single mom for 12 years. My daughter is 19 years old. And as a Black woman, I viewed myself as a struggling single mom carrying all of this guilt and shame because I was somehow equating the quality of my life to other people's lives. So I moved my daughter to the suburbs, having no idea all of the obstacles and the things that she would be fighting against, the racism she had to deal with at school, the fact that, it was like we had this scarlet letter because, her parents are divorced. And here I am like fighting for my career so that I could have the resources to provide for her. But really now having to realize that it was never going to be enough because it's never the same. And so when I talk to the kids that I work with, whether it's through Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or my work through Beloved, is that everything comes down to owning your worth. Because Black people as a people, we have been so oppressed and so traumatized that it has torn down our identity. And we have been fed these lies that somehow if we don't have XYZ, we're not enough. And so because of the things that I've experienced through my childhood, so grew up in an environment that was very traumatic and really just gave me a warped view of self that then contributed to me making some decisions as a teen and a young adult that really only hurt me. They didn't help me. But thankfully, I did have mentors that spoke truth to me and said, hey, this is not who you are. Your experiences do not determine who you are. So as a mom, as an advocate for other young people, other women, other people of color, it comes down to don't let anyone tell you who you are. And there's, as a people, as Black people, there is power in aligning pain with purpose. We do not have to be ashamed. We do not have to hide. And we can no longer allow people to tell us who we are. So that is the message that I share with everyone that I work with.
I love that. I mentioned her, so there she is. Her friend Angel McGee, Nicole, and Chandra are two of the most amazing women that I know, definitely leading the way in our community. Anytime I get a chance to shout out my friend Angel is a good day. She knows that one. I think that she's amazing, and I've watched her grow up a little bit since being a young kid with the Royals and doing that. And so I just wanted to give her that shout out for that. André, I want to go to you, and I think about all these discussions that we're having. I think they're good. I know they're good. We obviously have to be able to act on them. I want to get back to the hope question. You know, you and when I had you on my podcast, and you and I have, you know, started to build this friendship, I think over the last maybe year, it's been organic, completely organic, and we just started being in the same places, and I think we both realized, man, I think we like hanging out with this guy. We like having We were having discussions about all types of other things. I mean, I think that
Right.
to me, what I love about you is that you have this way of connecting with people. You ladies both know this. André is the people's person, right? I think André could walk into any room and connect with anyone. It's one of your gifts. It's what makes you successful. As you've told me before, you're in business development, but business oftentimes doesn't even come up. You build relationships. So what kind of relationships are being built right now during this? I mean, we're not gonna get rid of all the racists. We're not gonna change that. I do think that we can have people that are different start to understand each other better. What are your thoughts and hopes on that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate them. You know, and look, thank you for the comments. I think that what I've tried to do in my career is in some of the work that I do, and it's not about the work that I do for building me. It's just what I'm here to do, which is an impact other people, right? I think that's what my life's mission is about. It's about impacting people. So I think what I've tried to do is just, you know, it's rare when we walk, and I'm saying we, us people of color, we walk into a room and see 25 other people that look like us. So what we try to do, and what most of us do, we're always cognizant of that. So we're trying to open those doors to other people that should be in that room. And we need to continue to do that. We also need to continue to acknowledge that none of us got to where we are because we only had relationships with people of color. There are people who are white who don't subscribe to the inhumanity we saw a few weeks ago on TV, right? There are tons of people that have helped many of us get to a door, get to an executive board meeting, get to a leadership position, because they don't subscribe to that. And so we need to acknowledge those people. And they are by far the majority, even though the 3%, the 4% are who we see on every news outlet, right? And so we need to be aware that we have allies out there that care about us. Because in this market, you can't get into those doors without our allies, right? We need everybody at the table trying to help. So I'm hopeful. And again, I've seen people from every industry and leadership roles reach out to me and say to me that, how are you? How are you doing? I stand with you. What can I do? You were one of them, Joel. And what I've said to you and others is appreciate that. Use your voice, use your privilege, use your access, and speak out. That's the requirement. And so what I would tell you, we've also had to have some dialogue with folks that, you know, they're quick to talk about, and I'll go back to this, and it's just, again, a lesson. And it's, I think for the most part, it's unconscious. People are so quick to talk about the looting, right? And the rioting. And so what happens from that moment is you reveal yourself. And what you reveal yourself to be is someone that didn't speak out about the murder. So you're not speaking out about the murder. You're not standing up for the equality of others, regardless of skin tone. You're only mad about the stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to call that out and talk about that. And we do talk about that. And if you feel uncomfortable hearing that, you should, because this really isn't a warm, fuzzy feeling in moment. And so what we need to do is have the conversation which we're having. So I'm hopeful for that there's a conversation that's being had on every platform, but there's a lot of work to do because there's still a generation that exists that doesn't subscribe to that, right? They want it to be the way it was. It's the language, it's code. There's a lot of code words that are being thrown around now. And so if you're of color, you pick up the code word, you know what that code word is. If you're white, you don't quite understand, you just kind of go with that language. Real quick on the white privilege thing, you know, for people who aren't of color, first of all, if you don't acknowledge that there is a privilege, you really can't help, right? You can't help what's happening today. And you become someone that's going to slow up the evolution of what we should have evolved to 40, 50 years ago, right? Because I had one of my coaches from my college called me one day, and he was upset because he said, I don't have white privilege. I've worked my butt off, and no one's ever given me anything. And I said, that's not white privilege. Yeah. White privilege is you get the benefit of the doubt that I don't get. Joel, you got the benefit of the doubt because you said, they pulled me over at gunpoint. Of course I'm going to go home. People of color can't say that, right? We can't say they pulled me over. Of course I'm not going to jail. Of course I'm not going to be met with aggression. We know that to be the truth. Not in all cases, in many cases. And most of law enforcement are good, really good people. We know that. And it's funny, you'll say, but we'll lump all the protesters into the bad protesters. But then at the same sentence, we'll say, but not all cops are bad. So until that starts to change, then we'll see the evolution of what this country can really be. But I am optimistic because we have so many young people in the program, the Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they're protesting. They want their voices heard, every age demographics represented. So one of the things I told my mother, who she never thought she'd ever see a moment like this at 75, and I agreed, I never thought she would either. But one of the things I told her is, when we lose hope, we are in real trouble in this country. When we start to lose hope in our people. And I'm not hopeful I'm not talking about my generation, 50 and older and all that. That's good. You're going to be what you're going to be. But this new generation coming up, I have a feeling, it feels different to me. I feel like they're just not going to put up with it any longer. And they're going to use their voices. And you're seeing what's happening with Starbucks, right? So Starbucks went to this whole thing where, not to admit, but this is something that's relevant. They can't wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt 2 days ago. Now you can. Just had a thing happen 2 years ago where you shut everything down. You went through all this DEI training. Something happened in the leadership there that they kind of forgot what happened. And so we have to remind them that it's not over. It's not going away. We've had protests for 3 weeks now. It's not going to stop. It's going to continue. But I think the behaviors are starting to change because you're even seeing law enforcement at leadership levels call it out for what it was, which was a virtual murder. And so I'm having a lot of different conversations, and I'm being very, very, I want people to sort of arrive there on their own, but I'm being very direct with people. You want to help? Get involved. You want to help? Use your voice. You want to help? Host something. You want to help? Engage with people. Get out of your comfort zone of your network. Go meet some people that don't look like you and try to figure out what their story is. That's what it requires. And people of color, we've had to do that because every time we walk in a room, no one looks like us. And I would tell people, go somewhere in this city. Just go. There's many things you can go to. Go somewhere in this city and put yourself in a situation where no one looks like you and see how you feel about it. Just internalize what that feels. Do you feel awkward and leave and get in your car and go, well, that was just not fun? Sometimes it's not fun, right? We do it day to day because it's what's required, but we're so confident in who we are. We're not worried about what people think. We don't care what you think. We're just we're going to let you know who we are by how we articulate our thoughts and the things that we're trying to do, whether that's nonprofit, for-profit, whatever that is.
Yeah, I'm thinking as you talk about that, I think he might be watching right now. My little brother in St. Louis, the 32-year-old, he brought me out a couple of years ago. We'd actually never been out for a drink, and he brought me out after a game.
I would hope not. He's 14 when you met him. I hope you weren't drinking with him. I mean, come on, Joel.
We did have 21 to 31, and
got it right with
30.
You.
Okay, no,
right,
we're not doing that at 14 or 15 years old. No, I wasn't that bad of an influence. But he brought me to a bar near the stadium, and not only was I the only white guy in there, I was the only old person in there, and then he had a good friend with him, and there were a ton of young people, and then his friend lived upstairs, so he's like, I gotta run and take a shower, because he actually worked at Busch Stadium, so wanted to go clean up, and I'm just sitting there by myself, and I did think about that. I'm like, I'm a little bit out of place. Now I felt safe because I'd been brought in there and all of that.
Right.
Safe meaning that look, hey, these are his friends. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that'd be a great exercise. Walk in. Let's be uncomfortable. Let's be a little bit uncomfortable. Final thoughts. I gotta run. I got a speech coming up. The world that we live in with virtual here. So, André, I'll make that your final. There's some amazing comments on Facebook. I can't get to all of them, but I would encourage everyone just to go back if you're watching this, or look on my Facebook feed, and you'll see so many people chiming in. Chandra, I want to give you a final thought here and just what everyone can do. I know Kiana made a comment here about ask how we're doing, not what we can do for you. I would just take it a step further and say, what can we all do to work together here for those that are interested in change beyond those that have always been fighting for change? What are your final thoughts, Chandra? And, where can we take this right now? Uh-oh, I just dropped Chandra. Can you believe I dropped her?
Okay.
I don't usually make those mistakes, so let's go to Nicole. I hope Chandra will jump back in. I apologize for that. But Nicole, how about final thoughts from you?
It's so hard to capture it in one thought, but my thought is make an influence in your sphere of the world. And that sounds like such a common saying, but I told one of my friends who's a prosecuting attorney, she asked me how she could help. I said, exactly in your workplace. You are in a position to affect change in your workplace all the time by being a prosecuting attorney and interacting with judges. Another friend in leadership at a bank, she said she picked up white fragility. I said, start a book club, affect change within your sphere there. When André mentioned our champions, I used to be content in thinking that I had champions opening doors for me. I'm no longer that way. I want to dismantle the system that says that we have to have champions speak on our behalf because we can't stand alone and get some of these opportunities. So continuing to dismantle racism, there's a great organization showing up for racial justice, SURJ, S-U-R-J, that helps white people intentionally interact with others to help dismantle racism and white supremacy. So that's one of my top resources.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. And Chandra, first off, my apologies. Somehow I kicked you out of the whole thing, which was not my intention. And I'm like, I hope she comes back. And you did with a big smile on your face. It was not personal. I'm trying to mute. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that to avoid some of the feedback. But I did ask you a question, so I'll let you continue, Chandra.
Well, thank you. I thought I did it to myself because
no.
He's not my friend. So I just would say be willing to have the hard conversations, first of all, with self. So Joel, you've illustrated that with saying, doing that self-reflection and saying, hey, why have I not done this? So why am I now doing this? So I think, number one, have those courageous conversations with self and have them with others. And I think be willing to enact change. It's just time. It's time for everyone to be about change. Again, it's about human kindness. It's about how you treat others. I think we're at the place in our society where we realize we can no longer cover up mistreatment. We can no longer cover up racism. We have to enact change, and we all need to be at the table. And that's what we can do. And it starts with us. It starts with us dealing with our own hatred, bigotry, bitterness, experiences, but it's time for us to have those real courageous conversations.
Well, Chandra, thank you. I want to thank all of you for having this discussion. And I want to say too, I don't want thanks. I don't want Joel's doing this or that. Let's just have these conversations, and hopefully more people want to have these. I happen to have, the voice because of baseball, where some people might pay attention more to me than others. I wish I had used that voice in a more productive way in terms of this in the past. That's a goal of mine at this point. So, I want to leave that there and just say that I think that there are more conversations to have. These conversations should stop. None of this should stop. So, I want to say to all of you, André, you and I already have that friendship. I look forward to getting to know you, Nicole, better, Chandra, you better. Let me know how I can help. If that's just spreading messages, if that's providing, whatever it is, just let me know. We need to be in this together, and I wish that those type of efforts happen sooner. But let's keep this going. Let's keep talking. Let's keep listening. I hope that makes sense. But
totally.
André,
and kudos to you, Joe. This was your idea, right? And you asked, and that's the first step, is just asking. So I give you credit, and thank you, Chandra and Nicole, for accepting the invitation. Little short notice, but I knew you would step up to the plate. So.
Yep.
Thank you for your friendship, André. Joel, thank you again. Nicole, thank you for your friendship. So this was a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Have
You're
a great
welcome.
weekend.
Thank you all.
See you guys.
Let's keep this going. André Davis, Nicole Jacob Silvey, Chandra Clark, phenomenal guests for me here today. And thank you all for watching. Please share this with your networks. Whoever you are, whatever you work in, whatever your background is, whether you're white, you're black, you're whatever. These are important conversations. And again, I'll just keep saying them. Let's have them over and over again. Quick thanks to my sponsors, JJ's Wine and Spirits in Johnson County, Overland Park, southwest corner of Antioch and College. Casey Cattle Company up in Weston, Missouri. They will deliver Wagyu beef, and to Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you back here next week for Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. I'm Joel Goldberg. Stay safe, everyone.